Well, plenty of incident, plenty of drama in that first innings at the SCG. And what's nice to see, a nearly packed Sydney cricket ground. They got their money's worth in terms of entertainment. Matthew Wade with another fine half century, a chanced one. Glenn Maxwell with an entertaining half century, a charmed one. And we'll discuss what sort of score 186 is on ESPN Cricket for Match Day with Tom Moody and Gautam Gambhir. They got 190 last game, wasn't enough. Tom, how's 186 looking?
Look, again, I think it's an average score, a par score. It sounds a lot. It is a big total, but I think as India showed in the last game at this venue, 180, 190 is only a par score. I think if you want to feel like you're safe at the half-time break, you need 200 plus.
It's that sort of feeling, Gautam, where you feel the amount of chances that Australia had and the sloppiness by India in the field, that if they were to be made to pay for it, there should be a score in excess of 200. Indian fans would be saying 190 was chased down. So what kind of score is 186 for you?
See, I reckon it is a decent total. Not every day you end up chasing 190, 195 or whatever, 186. This is a decent total. Australia needs to bowl better. Yes, day in, day out, you won't be able to get 195 or 200. It's difficult. Plus, if Australia bowls better than what they did last time around, they should be able to defend this because India doesn't bat that deep. If you see Hardik Pandya at number 6 and then they've got Washington Sundar, Shardul Thakur, they don't have Ravindra Jadeja. So it's about just bowling well and probably taking wickets up front as well and need some smart captaincy and the smart bowling changes as well. Plus, they're playing 2 leg spinners and India's got only one left-hander at the top of the order. So that's got to be a crucial phase of the game as well. So let's see, because 186 on any wicket, on any ground, yes, Tom just mentioned it's par score, but I feel on any ground, 185, 186 is a decent total because you really need to bat well to actually chase it down. India did it last time around. They batted really, really well. Let's see whether they do it this time around or not.
All right. Now, let's get into the individual efforts. And I will come to India's collective fielding effort and the chances that went away. But let's start the conversation with Matthew Wade. 80 to follow up that fine half century in the last T22. In many ways, just the batting revolved around Matthew Wade. He had that one chance. We'll come to that later. But just as the couple of innings that he's put together, Tom, I saw your tweet as well. This seems like a good time to cash in on the kind of form Matthew Wade has, not just in this format.
Yeah, look, he'll be thrilled that, number one, he's got a chance at the top of the order. That is the best spot to be batting in T20 cricket, 1, 2 or 3. And he's been given that chance, so he'd be delighted with that. And he's taken full advantage. Not only will he go into the Test series with confidence, given that he's got runs, but he'll also go in giving the selectors an opportunity to maybe look at their various options with regards to their batting order. Australia have got a bit of a crisis with their opening batting slot, and it may well be that Wade could help out with that crisis and find himself at the top of the order, which will leave an opening at number 6 for Cameron Green, the young, exciting all-rounder.
That's something for Australia to consider, Gautam, but he looks like he has the game certainly to take on all types of bowling.
See, I reckon that it's a good headache to have for Australian selectors, especially in a T20 format. And whether actually, I know I'm going to make a big call, whether actually Steve Smith fits into the T20 side. Now it's a big question mark because once David Warner, Aaron Finch and Matthew Wade are there, and if you can actually ask even David Warner and Matthew Wade to open the batting and Finchy can bat at number 3. So let's see, because then Maxwell and Stoinis, all those guys can come in the later half of the innings as well. Because you got to cash in, and the way he batted in the last 2 games surely is a great option to have, especially in the first 6 overs as well, because he plays with a lot of freedom. He keeps wickets as well, so you can actually ask him to just go and play freely what he did in the last 2 games. Great option to have.
That's a big statement. So let me take it back to Tom then. We were discussing if the World Cup was tomorrow, who your Indian pacers would be. If it was tomorrow for Australia, who would ideally form their best top order? Would Matthew Wade be in ahead of Steve Smith for you, Tom?
Look, what intrigues me with Steve Smith is that he's just come off the back of 200s off 62 balls. And he just batted in a seamless way. I'd love to have a conversation with him around, what was his thought process, what was his game plan around his approach in that 50-over opportunity. Because there's no doubt he is the person to be selecting because he is a world-class player. But I think he needs to unmuddle his mind and thinking in T20 cricket, because I think at the moment his mind's going too fast, and therefore the execution of his shots and the shot selections that he's taking are all out of sync, and therefore he's not finding the timing and not creative or productive as we know he can be.
Let me take that to Gautam.
Can I just add?
Yes, please, Gautam.
I would definitely want to add on to what Tom just mentioned, that what's going in Steve Smith's mind. First of all, in a one-day game, you've got 5 fielders inside the ring. So you time that ball over that fielder and you get a boundary. So there's never a lot of pressure on someone like Steve Smith. He's a world-class one-day player. I've already said it on your show that he's probably very close to Virat Kohli in one-day cricket. But in T20 cricket, suddenly when you have to hit the ball really hard, when you've got defensive lines, when you've got 4-5 fielders outside the ring, and you come into bat after 6 overs, even if you come into bat in the first 6 overs, after the 6th over, you need that power game. So that's probably something which Steve Smith's lack. And I know he's a world-class player. He'll be probably one of the greats of the game as well. But yes, T20 cricket is different. You would not have, why we talk about Steve Smith in T20 format, he's not as good as someone like Glenn Maxwell, is just because they've got the power game. And that's the reason why I'm discussing about it. That's totally, and it's a small change. I know it's a small change by just having 5 fielders inside the ring plus 2 new balls, and you're never under pressure. You know you've got time to actually capitalize later on as well. But in T20 cricket, you've got to have that strike rate of 130, 140. If you're batting in number 3, that puts a lot of pressure. It has happened to me a lot of times when I was never a power hitter as well. So I felt that pressure going into the T20 game, never had that power game. So I had to feel that in the first 6 overs, I have to be as aggressive as I can so that after 6 overs, I can take my time. That's the reason I would open. So I had 6 overs. Steve Smith bats at number 3. So he doesn't have that luxury of using that first 6 overs to his advantage. And then probably later on, he can actually just keep hitting those gaps. When he comes after first 6 overs, he needs to have those boundaries. Even if you see today, he only got that first boundary of the 22nd delivery. And you don't expect that coming at number 3. But had he opened the batting in T20 cricket, he could have been 15 balls 30 in the first 6 overs. And suddenly he's a completely different player. And that has happened to the best as well. That is why Virat Kohli opens in T20 cricket for RCB, because that's where he thinks that he can make the most of batting at the top of the order and then probably put less pressure on him. Suddenly he comes after 6 overs. He's a completely different player.
Is it the hardest format for a batsman like Steve Smith to get consistent in, Gautam? I mean, you can do those 50 ball hundreds in ODIs, but in T20 cricket, if he faces 20 balls, there's a chance he may get stuck like he did today with a run a ball 20, or he may have a long innings. We've seen Steve Smith play brilliant T20 innings if he stays a long period of time. It's about getting maximum out of him if he plays these 15-20 ball sort of innings. Is this the hardest format for certain batsmen like Steve Smith to be consistent in?
It is, no doubt about it. And not only for Steve Smith, people like Virat Kohli, people like Kane Williamson. Kane Williamson is probably a unique guy. He can actually open the batting. He can bat at number 3, number 4. He's done that for different franchises, but he still doesn't have the power game. But he then finds those gaps. He can hit over cover. He can hit over mid-wicket and those kind of stuff as well. But yeah, for people like Steve Smith, they will be unbelievable players in one day and test format. But in T20 cricket, probably the best, if Australia wants to use Steve Smith, is probably at the top of the order. And there is no room for Steve Smith at the top of the order because they've got Aaron Finch and David Warner. So that's why I feel that it's going to be difficult unless and until you're chasing 150, 155, 160. Then people like Steve Smith are very, very important. Certainly when you need to have 190 on the board or you're chasing 190, they will always be under a lot of pressure.
And that's exactly the thing I was going to come to next, Tom. If they were chasing a 160, 170 in a high pressure game on a wicket that might be doing something, all of a sudden you would want Steve Smith in that team regardless of his T20 form.
And that's absolutely right. And let's highlight the fact that not every T20 game, the scores are 180 to 200. You do have those challenging games that, scores that are posted between that 140 to 160, where the ball might be just holding in the surface, might be turning, and might be a little bit of movement early on. And that's where your world-class players shine, like your Kohlis, your Williamsons, and they can navigate those challenges and still manage to score without the panic of losing wickets. So, again, going back to your original question, do you leave Smith? Does Steve Smith, is he left out of your side if you've got a World Cup match coming up in the next week? Well, my answer to that is no. But I'd love to sit down with him if I was coaching or whatever the case is in that environment, and just to unpack his thought processes around T20 cricket and his approach.
All right.
And the best you get out of Steve Smith is when you've got power hitters probably coming after him, and you've got two power hitters at the top of the order. If you see in today's lineup, probably they had Maxwell coming after him. They didn't have Marcus Stoinis. Moses Hendricks is coming back into the international side, and then they've got Darcy Short. So once they've got the proper playing 11 with Marcus Stoinis, Mitchell Marsh, all those guys after Steve Smith, and they've got Aaron Finch and David Warner at the top of the order. It might take a lot of pressure off Steve Smith, but today, if you see with this kind of batting lineup, apart from Maxwell, and when Finch got out early, there was a lot of pressure on him as well. And yes, there will always be room for people like Steve Smith, Kane Williamson, for example, Joe Root as well, when you're chasing 150, 155. But yes, when you have to set up a total like 190, 195, then you will always be under pressure. But once Australia plays their full batting lineup and their full best playing 11, there will be far less pressure on Steve Smith.
All right, let's move on now. We've got quite a few things to discuss. Plenty happened in that first innings. I'm sure Indian fans would be just looking back and saying, in spite of the result of this series, Gotham, there perhaps is some concern or some inexplicable reason as to why there's such a lack of discipline in the field. Drop chances, balls, misfields going for boundaries. There's a miss stumping today. There was a catcher for no ball. Just tell me what you make of all of it.
See, we started off saying that there could be a concentration thing, but now I can feel there could be a confidence thing as well. I remember in 2012, no, in 2008 or 9, when we were in England, and Robin Singh was a fielding coach, and we actually dropped around 25, 20, 30 catches. And then it's so contagious that it starts with one and it just keeps going to other people as well. And it is a confidence thing initially, because after a T20 game, when you're playing a 50 game, your concentration levels might not be there. But today, if it's happening over a period of time, then it has to be a confidence thing that suddenly you feel that you have to take those catches. If you haven't done that in the previous game, then there are more pressure on you to probably rectify that mistake. That is the only thing I can see from now on. I don't think so it's a concentration thing anymore.
Yeah, I mean, talk about contagious blobs of fielding, Tom, and you think a great fielding effort might break that. We saw Samson take a great catch in this series. We've seen moments of brilliance, but we've seen a lot more sloppiness. How do you stop it if you're in the coaching setup?
Well, I think I think it has moved from concentration to discipline now. I just think there's a lack of discipline. Fielding's one of those things that it is an individual responsibility, and there's pride attached to it. And if you don't have pride in every action that you have on the field, whether that be an aggressive approach to the ball, a clean pickup, and an accurate throw every time it comes to you, just the small things, if you're not doing those small things well, whether you're under pressure for that particular ball or you're not under pressure for that particular ball, suddenly when that opportunity comes with a catch, you are behind the eight ball. You're not anywhere near the intensity that you should be. So I just think that maybe that's possibly the case, is that there's a little bit of sort of a blasé approach to the fielding and a little bit of show pony type behaviour in the field, and that is starting to backfire. To me, it is, as I've highlighted, it is an individual responsibility. And you need to take that responsibility and make sure everything you do in the field, whether it's backing up in the field, whether it's those clean pickups or accurate throws, whatever it is, it needs to be done at the intensity that you expect when a real chance comes your way.
Now let's get into other instances of lack of discipline for India. And the 13th over, big moment when Glenn Maxwell was caught of Yuzvendra Chahal. He was only on 18 at the time, but Chahal had overstepped. Now, Gautam, it's not the first time we've seen Yuzvendra Chahal overstep. I keep hearing this from ex-players saying that it's criminal for a spinner to bowl a front foot no ball. Chahal's had this problem for a while now. What do you make of it, and how can he rectify it?
See, it is criminal. We've seen that in the past as well, especially if it happens from a spinner. That's even more worse. We've seen that Champions Trophy in England where Jasprit Bumrah actually overstepped and how badly it hurted us. It could happen in a big game as well. And today also, when you overstep to a player like Glenn Maxwell and then you give him another opportunity, he can come back to hurt you big time. And if you're a spinner, that is absolutely not acceptable. Yes, it can happen to fast bowlers when they look to push on or probably bowl a Yorker or probably bowl that bouncer. When there's little extra effort, you might just tend to overstep. That is still acceptable. Obviously, it's not acceptable in a game when you're actually under pressure, but you can still give it to them. But then to a spinner, I don't think so. Anyone would accept that, and especially against someone who can hurt you very badly.
I like that you mentioned Bumrah, Tom, because we go back to that Champions Trophy final in 2017 when Bumrah bowled that infamous snow ball. And since then, he went for the longest period of time without bowling one. It became almost a revelation. Either Bumrah had put that on himself to rectify it and get rid of it. Now, Yuzvendra Chahal has this long delivery stride as a spin bowler. He continues to make this error. If you were working with Chahal, what would you be working on to get this out of his game?
I'd be working on the fact that he needs to be bowling with his toe on the front line, not his heel. And again, I mentioned with regards to the discipline in the field, this is just another discipline issue with the bowler and part of his routine and the way he practices. At the end of the day, it mustn't be that important for him at the moment, but it certainly is important for everyone else that pays the consequences for it. If it was important to him, like it obviously was for Jasprit Bumrah, you do something about it. You seek help and you work very, very hard to get it right. Whether you're practicing in the nets, whether you're in practice matches, whether you're playing first-class cricket, whatever it is you're doing, you are mastering that skill to make sure you're not making that same error.
Does the onus lie? Sure. Does the onus lie more on the individual here or on him needing some help in this particular case to correct what is an obvious flaw from someone in the coaching staff? We know teams don't necessarily carry spin bowling specialist coaches. There are bowling coaches. Where does the onus lie more, Tom?
That doesn't require a spin bowling coach. The onus solely on the player, and the player seeks guidance and support from the management around him to get it right. So the conversation, which I'm sure would have happened time and time again with him, is around, we need to be working on this. What's the process? How are we going to go about it? And then the player has to take responsibility. At the end of the day, it's like saying to a batsman, well, you keep getting out playing the sweep shot. Well, what do you do about it? You practice the sweep shot until you get it absolutely right. And whilst you're practicing it, you don't play it under pressure in games because you know you haven't yet mastered that skill. And once you feel confident enough when you've mastered that skill, you then bring it into competition. So to me, the onus is very much on the individual, but he needs the guidance from his peers, whether it be the management or senior players around him.
Right. Yes, let's take another couple of quick points, shall we? Which happened in that first innings. The LBW review of Matthew Wade. He was at the time batting on just 50, and it seemed like a confusing thing because Virat Kohli, we thought, initially took the review. Then the third umpire initiated what was the review protocol. Then it came to light that perhaps the review was taken after the replay was first shown on the screen. Now, we don't know if Kohli did take the review in time or not. But a question that comes up here is, if it is within the 15 seconds, should you not be showing that replay on the big screen in the first place? And what the ideal way to go about it was. What did you make of it, Tom? Did you manage to see it closely enough?
Yeah, I did. My understanding was the big screen showed the replay after the 15 seconds expired.
Okay.
And that was the whole confusion. Because no one really understood what the exact timing was. And that's why they aborted the review, because I think it was, the review was asked for at the 19th second. And as we know, it's a 15-second window that you ask, the umpire to go upstairs.
Let me make this a bigger issue, Gautam, on the use of KL Rahul, the keeper in this case, who's not had a great day behind, missed stumping, reviews that didn't go India's way. There's also Sanju Samson in that team. I'm just trying to wonder, Gautam, what you make of the role of the wicketkeeper, the role of KL Rahul as keeper, and when you have other options, whether he still outranks a Sanju Samson on who should take the gloves.
See, again, it's a difficult thing because KL Rahul is your white ball wicketkeeper now. So the more opportunities you give him to keep wickets, the better it is. Sanju Samson is not going to be in your 50-over scheme of things. But yes, ideally you would want Sanju Samson to keep wickets, but then KL Rahul now is your number one wicketkeeper in white ball cricket. So it makes sense for KL Rahul to keep keeping wickets, and that's the right thing as well, because the more he keeps, the better he gets, because he's not a regular wicket keeper, and these are opportunities which will only make him better. Yes, ideally, if you've got people like Sanju Samson, or for that matter Rishabh Pant and all those guys, they would be keeping wickets. But then now it's fair enough because he's the number one in your ranks.
All right, it's capped a pretty ordinary day for KL Rahul. He's actually been dismissed second ball of Glenn Maxwell for a duck. So that's the perfect start for Australia. Let's pick up this conversation at the end of the game. There's still plenty more that I wanted to take Tom and Gautam's views on, including the use of Shardul Thakur, who didn't bowl in the first 11. Maybe we'll pick up that conversation at the end of the game as Australia snap this winning streak for India in T20Is and at least salvage one game to avoid a whitewash in the T20I series. There are runs to get. They're good runs. Let's see if it's another dramatic final over finish or whether Australia can see this through in a good time. We'll join Tom Moody and Gautam Gambhir on ESPN Cricket for Match Day then. And remember, wickets, major incidents, whatever happens, highlights, you can catch them if you're watching in the Indian subcontinent on ESPNcricinfo.com as well as the mobile app.